38 minutes into a game the United States simply cannot lose, a 24-year-old from Hershey, Pennsylvania, throws his entire body at the ball and into the onrushing goalkeeper. He scores the goal that sends his country to the knockout rounds. Then he crumples to the turf, clutching his abdomen. The whole nation is celebrating. Their captain is being carried off. How does a kid from a chocolate town in central Pennsylvania end up carrying all of this? This is the story of Christian Pulisic. Hershey, Pennsylvania, a town built on chocolate with streetlights shaped like candy kisses. It is not the kind of place that produces footballers, and certainly not the most important one America has ever made. He was born here on the 18th of September, 1998. Soccer ran in the blood. Both his parents played the game in college, and his father, Mark, would go on to coach professionally indoors. By the time he could walk, there was a ball at his feet. Teammates and coaches in central Pennsylvania remember the same thing: a small kid who was simply quicker, sharper, and braver on the ball than everyone around him. For a year as a child, the family lived in England while his mother taught there. He played youth football on rough English pitches, an early taste of the harder, faster game that would shape him. Back home, he tore through the US youth system. The talent was obvious. The question was always the same: where could a teenager this gifted actually go to become great? The answer came through his family tree. His grandfather was of Croatian descent, and that Croatian passport, an EU passport, changed everything. A teenager goes to Germany. In 2015, at just 16, that passport let Christian Pulisic do something almost no young American had ever done: sign for one of Europe's biggest clubs as a minor. Borussia Dortmund, the Yellow Wall. He moved to Germany alone at 16, leaving home to chase a game on another continent. He tore through Dortmund's youth teams faster than anyone expected. Within months, he wasn't a project for the future. He was knocking on the first-team door. In early 2016, aged 17, he made his Bundesliga debut. The American teenager was now playing in front of 80,000 people every other week. Then came the record. In April 2016, he scored and became the youngest non-German ever to score in the Bundesliga. Soon after, he broke his own record as the youngest to score twice. He wasn't just an American curiosity anymore. He was a genuine Bundesliga footballer rewriting the league's record books. What made people sit up was the way he played. Direct, fearless, driving straight at fullbacks and going past them like they weren't there. The low center of gravity, the burst over the first 5 yards, the willingness to take the ball in tight and humiliate a defender with a quick touch. This was a different kind of American player. By 17 and 18, he was a regular for Dortmund in the Champions League, holding his own against the best clubs on the planet. Back home, the hype was building into something heavy. The American media had been waiting decades for a true superstar, and now they had found him. The nickname arrived and never left. Captain America. A label of hope and a weight stamped onto a teenager who had barely started. America's most expensive footballer. In January 2019, the move came that confirmed his status. Chelsea, a London giant, a Champions League club, came calling. The fee was reported at around $73 million. It made Christian Pulisic the most expensive American footballer in history. $73 million for a kid from Hershey. No American had ever carried a price tag or an expectation like it. He stayed at Dortmund on loan for the rest of that season, then arrived in London in the summer of 2019 to begin life in the Premier League, the toughest, most relentless test in club football. The start was hard. New league, New physicality, a manager in Frank Lampard managing the hype around his young signing carefully. For weeks, Pulisic watched from the bench. Then, in October 2019, away at Burnley, he answered everyone. A hat-trick, the first by an American in Premier League history. The doubts went quiet fast. He became the first American to score a Premier League hat-trick, and at 21, the youngest visiting player ever to do it at Turf Moor. When football paused and restarted in 2020, he came back as one of Chelsea's best players. Electric, decisive, the man making things happen in the final third. He reached the FA Cup final that summer and scored in it, before a hamstring injury pulled him off and away from the trophy. It was the first hint of a recurring theme, his body letting him down at the biggest moments. The final no American had reached. The 2020-21 season turned on a managerial change. Thomas Tuchel took over, and Chelsea surged toward the Champions League final, the biggest game in club football. In the semi-final against Real Madrid, Pulisic scored at the Bernabeu, a cool finish in the most famous stadium in the world, helping push Chelsea to the final. On the 29th of May 2021, Chelsea faced Manchester City in Porto for the Champions League. Pulisic came off the bench late in a tense, narrow win. When the final whistle blew, Christian Pulisic became the first American man ever to play in and win a Champions League final. The summit of European club football, reached by a kid from Pennsylvania. At 22, he had a winner's medal in the competition every player on earth dreams of. It should have been the launch pad. Instead, it became a peak he'd spend years trying to feel again. When the minutes dried up. At Chelsea, the role started to fade. Managers changed. Injuries kept interrupting his rhythm. A calf here, an ankle there, always just as he found form. He became a squad player at a club that bought and sold attackers every window. The talent never disappeared, but the trust, the regular minutes, the central role, slowly slipped away from him. There were flashes, there were always flashes, but a flash isn't a career. For a player carrying a nation's hopes, sitting on a bench in London was the quietest kind of crisis. But on the international stage, everything. Because while his club career stalled, his country never stopped leaning on him. He'd debuted for the United States as a 17-year-old, and the armband came young. In 2021, he scored a penalty in a wild Nations League final win over Mexico, the great rival, beginning a stretch of dominance over the nation's oldest enemy. He dragged a young USA team through World Cup qualifying, goals, assists, leadership well beyond his years. This was a side rebuilt around him, which brings us back to Qatar, the 2022 World Cup. A group that came down to one game against Iran. Win and the United States advance. Anything else and they go home. 38 minutes. A cross from the right and Pulisic gambling everything, hurling himself at the ball, finishing past the keeper and straight into him. The goal stands. The United States are through. The cost was real. A pelvic injury from the collision. He was eventually taken to hospital, then somehow patched up to start the next match in the round of 16. The run ended against the Netherlands, outclassed by a more experienced side. But the image of America's captain scoring the decisive goal and paying for it with his body defined the tournament. He later said the moment was worth it, that he'd put his body on the line for his country and his teammates, and he'd do it again. That, more than any nickname, is why they call him Captain America. A new country, a new self, In the summer of 2023, he needed a fresh start. AC Milan, 7-time European champions, one of the most storied clubs in the world, took the gamble. Many wondered if a Chelsea reject could lead Milan's attack. He answered immediately, scoring in his first home game at the San Siro and barely stopping. In Italy, finally, he got what he'd been missing: trust, minutes, and a team built to use him. And the football he produced was the best of his life. Curling strikes, long-range thunderbolts, dribbles through whole defences. He wasn't a prospect anymore. He was a star carrying a giant. He delivered in the big games, in the Milan derby, in Europe, against the clubs that once let him drift. Milan's fans fell for him completely. By 2024, the verdict was hard to argue. Christian Pulisic had become arguably the most successful American club player of all time, a regular star at a European superclub. For the national team, he passed the legends. He climbed past Clint Dempsey on the all-time scoring charts, chasing down records that had stood for a generation. And as captain, he led the United States to a Nations League three-peat, winning the regional crown again and again, usually with Mexico standing in his way and falling each time. 3 consecutive Nations League titles as captain, a leader, a scorer, and now, undeniably, the greatest American player of his era. What's remarkable is how complete he became. The teenager who relied on raw speed grew into a forward with finishing, set pieces, vision, and the calm to decide tight games. He could play off either wing, drift inside, link play, and arrive in the box. The flashy kid from Dortmund had turned into a footballer you build a team around. The weight of a home World Cup. And now comes the moment his whole life has pointed toward. In 2026, the World Cup comes to North America, to the United States, his home. A home World Cup. The biggest sporting event the country has hosted in soccer since 1994. And the man expected to carry it all is the kid from Hershey. He will be the captain, the talisman, the face on the posters, and the name the whole country chants. Everything, the passport, Dortmund, the record fee, the bench years, the rebirth in Milan, has built toward this stage. Whether the United States goes deep will depend on a team, but the story, fairly or not, will be told through one man, the way it has been for a decade. The greatest American footballer. Think about what he changed. Before Pulisic, an American starring for a top European club was a dream. He made it normal. A Champions League winner, a Serie A star, a record breaker. He opened the door for the wave of young Americans now playing across Europe's biggest leagues. They grew up watching him do it first. Somewhere in America right now, a kid in a number 10 Pulisic shirt is kicking a ball against a wall, believing it's possible, because someone from a chocolate town proved it was. And it all comes back to that night in Qatar. A man throwing his body at a ball, scoring, and lying on the turf in pain while his nation roared. That's the whole story in a single image. The cost and the willingness to pay it. A prodigy who became his country's greatest. A nickname he had to grow into. And a final chapter. A home World Cup. Still waiting to be written. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Beyond the Boots for more. The boots tell the story. We just follow the footsteps.